You think she's a good girl, but once you get to know her, you realize she's everything. She's crazy, she's funny, she's honest, and you'll never know what she'll do next.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to see you again on Friday. And I'm going to give you a status update. I moved to Naples. I'm Tracy Bush Pate. This is my podcast, the Being Tracy Show podcast. I will often have people on this podcast to inspire you, to empower you through my life experiences, which I share, and also other people I have on my show, which have wonderful experiences as well that they can share with you to help empower you and give you the strength to make changes you need to make in your life, or to find out how other people are doing things. I always think that's interesting. So anyway, I'm Tracy Wish Pate. This is a Being Tracy Show podcast. And I moved back to Naples in January. I decided January 6th, I decided things, I'd been thinking about it for a while because I don't know if you remember my story. Why I chose Naples is because my ex-husband and I met in Naples. I moved from Indiana right after college, and I met him in like 2002. Had my first daughter 2003, 2004. I had another daughter. Then I had another daughter 2007. 2009, I had another daughter. So now I have 4 daughters, and this year they're all getting married. My one of my daughters just celebrated a year with her husband, and now I have another wedding in July, November, and February of 2026. So it's a wonderful time in our life. And so when I always like to think, if things aren't going well, or you're not getting exactly what you want where you are, what do you have to do? You have to make a change, right? And so what I did was, my ex-husband and I actually, we lived here for 15 years. We moved to the Republic of Panama, which is where part of my family lives. My mom and dad used to live there when they were alive. And we lived there after 17 years of marriage. We decided to get a divorce. That took about 2 years to become final. So it was like 2010, my ex-husband, or the father of my kids is the way I like to refer to him, came back to Naples, and he ended up meeting another woman here at the church that I introduced him to, which is called Celebration Beach Church, which is where I go to church now. And anyway, they're very happy, and we're all a big happy family now. But after, when I decided Panama wasn't exactly where I was going to find my soulmate, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to Florida, but I don't want to go back to Naples, which is what the father of my kids had done. I thought, I'm going to go back to the other side of Florida and see what that's like. And I chose Miami Beach because it was a lot like Panama, and I had spent so much time in Panama, 10 years, and I loved it there. But I thought, you know what? I guess I need a little bit of a more of an American blend, because things weren't working out with me on the dating scene in Panama to find my soulmate. So anyway, I started this blog page, which is what the podcast has been growing off of, which is called www.beingtracy.com. I've got over 100 blogs there that was inspired by mostly my dating experiences, things that would happen to me that would cause me to feel very passionately about something that had happened, and I would just write it down so I could get it out, and then I put it on there. And that page started because my Facebook page, Tracy Bush Pate, had all my family on it, my family business, the American Chiropractor Magazine, and all of followers from that were on it. And so I started this other page called Being Tracy on Facebook, which has now grown to about 60,000 followers. At one time, we were reaching 6.5 million. So it's done very well. But anyway, so that's how this all started. So all right. So I started in Miami Beach. I lived there for 5 years. I left my car in Panama, sold it, sold all my belongings in Panama, moved to Miami Beach, made friends, had 5 wonderful years there riding my bicycle around. And then during COVID, I decided, wow, I need, I things weren't working out there the way I wanted them to. And so I thought, well, I need to change. And I went up the side of Florida here that I'm living on now, this west side, and I thought, I don't think this is where I want to be. So then I went back to meet a friend in Coral Gables for dinner that night, and I thought, well, maybe this is where I want to be. So I just got my real estate license. I put it with a company there, started my real estate in Coral Gables, Miami. And for 2 years, I really enjoyed it there. But then some things started to happen where I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the way I want things to go. And, without pets, without my kids doing their own thing, my their father having a great relationship with someone else, I decided to move from Miami Beach to Miami to then I was going to go to Meisner Park in Boca Raton East. There's a difference, Boca Raton East and West. And if you have seen some of my other shows, you'll see what that difference is. But anyway, I chose Meisner Park. I lived there. I had a great time there. And that's where this podcast was founded. After I was on someone else's podcast, which is called Crazy Rich Neighbors. And after the podcast, they were like, "Oh my gosh, you were great. You have so many funny stories. You need to have your own podcast." So then I started this show, and I've really enjoyed sharing and hearing the feedback that I'm getting from people that I have made somehow shaped their lives and answered some questions that they've had. So always please remember, it helps the YouTube algorithm if you like it, share it, subscribe to my channel, share it with other people, post your thoughts below. That's all helping us with the YouTube algorithm so more people see this message. So please, anyway. So what I'm trying to tell you is when you're in a situation where you're not getting what you want, sometimes the best thing is to make a change. And if you can change your location like I did, wow, that's even better, because I feel like I've had a bunch of different situations I've lived through over the past, it was 10 years now. I lived in South Beach to Coral Gables, Miami to Boca East. I spent a couple of months in Boca West. I then had someone on my podcast in November who inspired me to move to Palm Beach. So I went ahead and moved to Palm Beach for a couple of months. And then as situations happened, I just started realizing, well, you know what? Palm Beach is a lot like Naples. And there were a lot of memories that were coming back from that. And then I started having some different health issues, my blood pressure rising, adrenal fatigue was setting in. I was just kind of getting exhausted. And I was feeling like staying home a lot instead of going out and doing the ton like I always had. And so I ended up deciding on January 6th, when a real estate deal that I was going to do didn't come through as I'd hoped it would, because of the person that owned the property, their kids didn't want to let it go. And that immediately made me think of my kids. And I thought, where are my kids right now? I want to go see my kids. I want to be in my kids' life again. And daily, like I was still in my kid's life, but I wanted to be a part of my kid's life closer again. And so that's why I chose to come back to Naples. And it's funny. I never wanted to come back to Naples because I thought I was going to go backwards. I don't go backwards. I always go forwards. But it's funny. When I came back to Naples, I realized Naples is still just as wonderful as it always was. But what has changed is me. It's not that Naples is a totally different place for me now because I have changed. Okay, so I'm really enjoying it. I have been dating, and I was talking to a woman the other night, and I want to talk to you about the differences of dating on the West Coast versus the East Coast. Okay, when I dated on the West Coast, and I did date a lot when I first got back to Miami Beach. Excuse me. Also, Coral Gables in Miami, I dated a lot. Because I somehow thought I'd missed out on something when I got married so young at 23, and I had 4 kids so quickly. And I thought, well, geez, I must be missing out on something. So I went out on all these dates, and God has created these dating apps to help you meet these wonderful people out there. Now, I choose to believe that everyone out there is wonderful, and you have something you can learn from everybody, right? But what I found myself in and I would seriously love to go on these dates because I always felt either it was going to be a good connection that I might have with someone, or it was going to be, as the man said to me yesterday that I had a date here. He said, he didn't want to be material for my blog or for my podcast. And so that's the way I chose to start seeing things. You know what? Either it's going to be a great date or it's going to be material for my podcast. And so that's actually something that happened to me yesterday. I had material for my podcast to show up, but I stopped dating kind of when I went to Boca because I was kind of exhausted from the experiences I've had and I'd written about. And so didn't date much in Boca, didn't date much in Palm Beach, and now I'm back in Naples, and I'm ready to find my soulmate again. I'm hoping he's gonna looking for me, and he's gonna find me. But so I'm trying to make it easy for him. I'm out there on the apps. I'm joining all these groups in Naples, and that's the biggest difference I found between the West Coast and the East Coast dating. On the West Coast, it's more of a relaxed environment versus a professional country club atmosphere, dressing up all the time over in on the other side. You know, people are always in a hurry, going to work, very active. Over here, they're very active too on the West Coast, but it's more of like a relaxed action. They're enjoying nature. They're going for beach walks. They're walking outside. A lot of people are walking outside too, but they're more of in a hurry because they've got to get to work or they've got places to be, or you got to always be looking good over there too. You got to be looking your best. And anyway, I'm just liking the more relaxed atmosphere over here. So I would say the difference of the two environments is more of this side, the west side is more of a comfy environment, and the other side is more glamorous. That's my experience. When I first got single in Panama, my sister-in-law said to me, I was devastated at first. I didn't know how I was going to meet people. I didn't know anybody because I'd always been hanging out with my family and my husband. And she said, Tracy, you know what you have to do? You have to go out to bars and sit by yourself. She said, because that's where you're going to meet the most people, is when you're by yourself. Because when you go out with other people, nobody wants to talk to you. They think you're already, doing something, that you're busy. So that's what I've done these past 10 years. I've got over 15,000 people on my phone, and I've pretty much networked, and I've gotten there lately, lately being the last 5 or 7 years. I've been getting their phone number, getting their picture, writing notes about where we met or what we talked about. And that helps me to remember who they are. And then if for some reason they message me one day and I forgot, I can look up their notes. Or if I want to reach out to them for a reason, if I search in my phone some kind of topic I might have made a note on, then they'll pop up on my phone and I can message them and say, hey, remember me? We were at the car wash and we were talking about this and this. And then they remember who I am. And that has helped me to network and get to know people better and closer. And so I'm going to tell you a couple of funny stories that happened. One was on the west side. One is on the east side. But I want to also talk to you about what men are expecting and what women are expecting in the dating process. Because something that I've come across over here in Naples, when I go out, and like I said, I always enjoyed on the east side of Florida. I could go out and sit at the bar, and a lot of people are out there all by themselves too, and I'd meet a lot of people like that. Well, over here in Naples, I found that when I go out and sit at the bar, there aren't so many people that want to talk to me. They're already matched up. They've already paired up. So I've just basically stopped going out and started watching Netflix at home if I don't have plans. And so then a couple of times since I'm back on the dating apps, I've gone out, and I've just been here since January. Two of the men that invited me out had no intention of buying me anything, no intention of paying for anything. I guess they just wanted to get to know me or whatever. That's fine, but it wasn't clear in my invitation. And honestly, I had other plans I could have done both times. So I think it's important. The girl I was talking to yesterday said she doesn't like dating here in Naples because she thinks it's a candy store. Like the men out there all just want women. Hey, look, you think you don't want to pay for something, but listen, women are paying for our hair, for our nails, for our clothes, to look great. So when we go out to meet you, yeah, I mean, like, it's a little bit insulting if you don't expect to buy us at least a drink or something like that to make us feel at least appreciated. So what happened to me yesterday was I went to meet this man who the night before had messaged me after I'd already gone to bed and said, and I didn't see it till later. He said he was at Bar Truly if I wanted to come over and get a drink. And I said, "Oh," I said, "I would have loved to." I said, "But I just got your message. I'm going to sleep now." It was 9:30. And I said, "I'd love to do that another time." So then the next day at like 4 o'clock, and I'm good on spontaneous, okay? But the next day at 4 o'clock, he messaged me again and said, "Hey, I haven't had lunch yet. I think I'm going to go over to, I don't know, this place on Livingston and Pine Ridge Road. I can't remember the name of it, but it's some salad place." So I was thinking, well, I mean, it's something, I'll go meet him. He looks handsome. I'm not going to go meet somebody if I'm not somehow could be attracted to their look or what they've said in their profile. I don't want to waste anybody's time, nor mine, more importantly. So I went over there. And as soon as I parked the car, and I told him I'd be there at 5 o'clock when he said he was going to be there around 5 o'clock. And as soon as I parked the car, he said, I got a message from him that says, "Hey, I was starving because I haven't eaten all day. I went ahead and ordered myself a salad, so I'm eating inside." Okay. So I went and said, "Okay, I'll be right in." So I went in. He was the only person in the place. And I looked around and I went and sat on the free chair at his table. It was obviously the man that I was supposed to meet. And he had this big whopping salad in front of him. And I thought, boy, that does look good. I'd like to get a salad like that for myself. But I mean, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to take it home, And so then he must have liked the way I looked because, yeah, I'm not going to. He showed up in his clothes that he'd said he wore to go walking on the beach. And he said, if we want to see each other again, I'm going to look a lot better next time. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. Well, of course, I only had 20 minutes or an hour to get ready, but I did my best to look good for this guy, right? Because first impressions matter. Okay, so I go in there and we start talking, and he says, "Well, okay, here's my story." And he starts telling me his story. And then after he gets halfway through his story, I say, "Wait a minute, I want to get a picture of you, and I want to be in it because I want to remember we met." So I take a picture of us, and then he finishes his story. It's something about his family. His parents are suing him for something. He's like number 8 of 10 kids. And I'm thinking, this doesn't sound like a guy that is going to be my soulmate. Like, first of all, he hasn't even offered to get me anything. He's sitting there eating in front of me. I walked in and sat down. He said, "Are you going to get yourself something?" And I said, "I'll get myself something, thank you." And but I just wanted to talk with him and see where it was going to go, because you know what? If I'm going to get myself something, I'm going to go spend my time by myself, which might be more pleasant, or with people that I know appreciate me. And because that's what a woman wants. A woman just wants to be appreciated. And when we're going to do this to make ourselves look good for you, men out there, we want to feel like we are appreciated. And the smallest thing he could have done was, I wasn't going to drink. I'm not even drinking right now much because I've got this adrenal fatigue thing I'm going through. My blood pressure's high, so I'm not even drinking much, okay? I just like to go out and meet people. And so anyway, finally I stood up and said, "Well," I said, "I am going to go get something to eat." And I've got some friends that wanted me to meet them, and I didn't want to make him feel bad, but I said, "You know what? I can see that you're already eating." And I said, "Maybe another time this would work out, but I want to find someone who's going to eat with me." And he said, "You just wanted a free meal." And the funny thing is, I heard something about this week. When men call women gold diggers, they're the men that don't have any gold. So right there, that's not the kind of man that I want to spend my time with. What I heard this week was, if a man has gold, he's not worried about gold diggers. He's buying things for the table. He's whatever you want. he's not worried about you taking away his gold. Especially if he likes you, men want to share and they want to make you know how important you are to them, and that they respect you and that they want to spend more time with you. If he'd have freaking just bought me a salad or a roll, or I mean like a roll, a wrap or something, I would have sat there and gotten to know him, and I might have enjoyed his company. But the way it was, I just stood up and I said, I'm looking for my soulmate, and I can tell right now that you're not my soulmate. And so he said, you're gonna go, he said, that's what you took my picture for. You just want to show it to all your girlfriends, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no. I said, I just wanted to remember that I met you. And I sent it to you too, so you can remember that you met me. And then I took myself, I thought, well, where am I going to go now? Because I didn't really have any plans. I took myself to the Ritz and just got myself a salad there, a bite to eat there, and a soup, a corn chowder and a cornbread, and drank water on ice because I'm not drinking right now. And I got to sit outside and look at the beautiful golf course and enjoy the pleasantries between people there. But you know what? I always think to myself, you have to learn something from every experience. And from that experience, I learned it matters who you're around. You got to be always wary of the people that are around you, how they make you feel, how, what you value. You have to make sure that what you value is what they value. And another thing is, as soon as he said there was that kind of trouble in his family, I don't know what's going on there, but my family is the most important thing to me, and that's one of the reasons why I came back to Naples, was to be near my family. So anyway, it just felt like a few things were off. And so anyway, that's another story about first impressions and West to East Coast. I mean, I can't remember that ever happening in the West Coast. Another time it happened to me or in the East Coast. But another time I was here and I went to meet a man last minute at Seed to Table, which is a really fun place. And I was invited there, and this man just showed up next to me. And he was sitting right there when I got there. And he said, oh, no, I didn't want to order anything. I don't want to order anything. And I said, oh, you don't? And I said, well, I came here to meet you, to have a bite and get a drink. I said, I had food at home. I could have stayed home and eaten. And he said, no, I don't want to eat anything. I already ate. So you see, that was another situation where it wasn't very clear, I guess. And then people say, oh, you should know each other better before you meet. But you know what? I don't think you can know anything until you meet someone in person. So you know what? I wrote that off. I went. He sat next to me. I talked to him pleasantly while I got my food and got something to eat and drink. And then I left, because there's no reason for me to stay there and get to know him any better, because the man that I'm looking for, and the man that a lot of women are looking for, is someone who's going to take care of us, make us feel safe, make us feel important, inspire us. Isn't that what we all want? So anyway, don't always, if you're worried about being taken for a ride or buying a girl a meal that maybe didn't deserve it, or that you wouldn't have expected it, then maybe you got to be more careful about the women that you're inviting out, because that's the kind of situation you're getting yourself in, where women like me, if you're looking for a classy woman like me who has money to buy myself a meal or a drink or whatever I want, but you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for someone special. And I'm looking for someone that thinks that I'm special and treats me like I'm special. And I would never, ever, ever be attracted to someone who made me feel less and who didn't respect a woman enough to buy her a meal, a drink. James, you're listening to me very intently. What do you think about this? This is my producer, James. You saw him on the podcast last week. What do you think, James?
One thing, I would never. Now I'm married, so a baby.
James is happily married. He has a beautiful wife.
And I try to spend all my time, because I don't have any gold. So I try to spend my time making sure that my wife knows that she is valued and that she is my priority, and maybe most importantly, that she is my partner. But here's the one thing that I would take issue with, and I would point this out to you. I would suggest that you never dress and look good for the man, but you always dress and look good for yourself.
Well, that's what my mother.
And when you
always
walk out
taught
the
me
door,
too, yeah.
when you walk out the door, no matter what happens at the end of that interaction, you've presented yourself
Great.
for yourself
Great.
in that fashion.
Right.
So that's the only thing I would take issue with. But yes, I would look for someone who, like you said, who makes you feel like you're valued. You might not even have any gold, but
and you know what?
I know.
I mean, it doesn't even really matter.
I know.
If he makes you feel good and you laugh, maybe he's funny, right? I mean, if you just have a good time, enjoy each other. But when you've got someone sitting there that's so concerned or worried that maybe you're going to try to take advantage of him, that attracts that to you. Don't you think so, James?
I would say so, probably.
Yeah.
It probably has a bit to do with that.
I think so too. Okay, so then I want to tell you the most memorable date I had since I've lived on this east side is with a man who had messaged me a couple times before that. We'd had a little bit of correspondence, and he had invited me to this restaurant called The Med. Have you ever been there, James?
No.
Okay, well, it's a pretty nice restaurant. I didn't even know it existed because it looks like nothing from the outside. But you go inside, and it reminded me of this place that I went to with my daughter. She took me to this place in Beverly Hills. And you walk in, it's like a little house, and it's got a backyard area and a little band over here. And so I got there, and he was waiting at the bar, and I changed it because I was running a little bit late. I asked him to please change our date from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And he assured me that wouldn't be a problem. But when I got there, he did tell me that he had trouble doing it, but since this place is like Cheers for him and they really know him there, he didn't have any trouble. And so they assured him that because it was him, he didn't have any trouble. And honestly, it was pretty busy, the whole place. It was really nice. And so then we went out and sat at our table, and he sat across from me at the table, and we just started chatting, but then there was like enough background noise, that it was like the kind of situation where if you saw my blog or heard my show where I talked about the interpreter that didn't understand, like we kept having this miscommunication problem where he wouldn't understand what I was asking him about, and he would answer like a totally different question, which on the interpreter, he would always turn it around to make me sound like a hussy, if you saw that one. But this was a little bit different. He just would be answering a totally different question. And finally, I was like, I don't think we can hear each other. And so then he said, oh, yeah, let me move over there by you, which he'd been a little bit touchy-feely of me. So I was a little bit concerned about that. This being our first meeting, he moved over next to me, put me so that my chair, he was straddling my chair. He turned his chair right here. He was straddling my chair. And I was like, oh, my goodness, and he was sitting as close to me as he could. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, and then he was a lot of hands. Okay. And then he asked what I wanted to eat. And then I said that, I was just eating a little bit. I wasn't drinking again. And so, I just had water and a lemon actually he got me a mocktail. And so anyway, then he ordered us a lobster platter to share and steak to share, and it was a very nice dinner, and we had some very nice vegetables with it. And then all of a sudden he stood up, put his napkin over his nose, and raced off to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, so far I've been feeling a little bit invaded by this man because he was sitting so close to me, straddling me, kept touching me all over. I'm like, let's just get to know each other before you start touching me all over, at least, please. But I didn't say anything. I was just trying to be polite. And I was stone cold sober. So there was nothing that was going to happen here that I didn't want to happen. And he went to the bathroom. He was gone for quite a while. And then I'm like thinking, where is this guy? Like what happened? Nothing had happened to make him upset or anything like that. I didn't know what could have happened. Finally, he comes back. He sits down in his chair, and he's got blood smeared all over his face, on his cheeks, on his hands, and he's sitting there real close to me to talk to me like everything's normal. And I'm thinking, you have blood on your face, I tell him. And he's like, oh, he's like, I think the other night I had like a concussion or something like that. But don't worry about it. I think I'm going to be okay. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting there looking at his blood on his face. I'm like, but you got blood over here, you got blood over here. And I'm thinking, is it up to me now to dip my napkin in water and like start wiping his face off? You know, I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do here? Is it up to me now to drive this man to the hospital and wait on him there and make sure he's okay? And I'm thinking, this is our first date, you know? I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know? So, you know, finally he pays the check. He said, I could see that you were really unnerved by that, by what happened. And he said, you know, anyway, we finished up pretty quick after that. He walked me out to the car and got in the car, and I left. I told him to please just make sure he's okay, you know? And then the next morning he texted me, and I said, when my first question was, are you okay? You know, and another thing that kept happening during the night, he kept saying, boy, I just really felt a real connection with you. I really felt this great connection with you. That's why I asked you out right away. And I really wanted to meet you. And like in a weird way, he started looking like my brother. I kept seeing my brother's face in his face, like one of my brothers. And I was just thinking, why is this happening to me? And so anyway, I went home that night, and it was seriously, truly one of these blog stories I would have written a blog on, but I'm trying not to focus on the bad dates, the dates that aren't my soulmate now, because I want to bring my soulmate into my experience. Anyway, the next couple of days, he texted me a little bit. I wasn't really responsive after I found out he was okay. That was really all I wanted to know. And then finally he messaged me and said, bad first impression, huh? And I just answered him back, and I said, well, it wasn't so much that you were bleeding or anything like that happened, but it was just you were too hands on with me. He was too handsy, wanting to touch me. And that's another thing. When you are a man who really likes a woman and wants to show respect for this beautiful woman that you take out, even though she might look like my friend said candy, give her a little bit of respect. Give her a little bit of time to get to know you and to maybe catch up with your feelings, if that's the way you're feeling. If you really like her already, I mean, he was talking about taking me on this cruise and all this stuff, and I was just thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but I didn't want to go on another date with him because he was just too touchy-feely. So I told him that. And, you know, he hasn't sent me a lot of messages since, just keeping in touch every once in a while. But that's just a note to you guys, you know, like, where has dating gone? What happened to getting to know a woman? What happened to allowing two people a chance to get to know each other? I mean, how long do you think that takes, James?
You know, it's difficult because people look at getting to know people very differently now than I was born in 1960. So the whole big deal. But to me, the part of the problem that's broken down is we take familiarity with actually knowing someone. If you're familiar with them, you've seen them on Facebook or whatever the case may be.
You feel that there's a connection, but they don't feel the connection yet, right?
Exactly.
Like, give us a chance to catch up. Don't you think?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was another thing, which brings us back to first impression. Okay, the first impression is very important. Okay, show up, look like you put some effort in. You know, buy the girl a drink or at the very least, you know, just something to show that you respect that she put in time to get there and meet you, and you invited her, because most of us ladies aren't going to come unless we're invited. Right? So then I do have one other story that I'll tell you real quick. And that was when I was dating on the other side of Florida. One of the ones that exhausted me so much I didn't want to date in Florida much more for the last 10 years. But this is called Who's Going to Pay the Check? Okay. I was invited when I lived in Miami Beach. And I was invited last minute to go out with this man. And he wanted to make sure I knew how to spell his name. He seemed to take all this time making sure I got to know him real quick before our date. And then he showed up to pick me up for the date, and he had on this song that I had in the dating app that said it was my mantra, and it was by Tori Kelly, and it's called what is it called again? Dear No One. It's called Dear No One, and it's about a woman that has figured out that she's going to make herself happy, that she doesn't really need anyone, but she wants to find someone to make her happy, or not to make her happy, but to we all want someone who's, we don't need to rely on anybody to make us happy, but someone that's going to make us even happier than we already are, right? Now that brought me to thinking about needing versus wanting. James, what do you think about that? I heard a couple of people talking the other day that said the man, it was a married couple, and the man said, and I've always said, you don't need anybody, you want somebody. I've corrected women saying that before. And this man said, you know what? When I hear a woman say that she only wants somebody, she doesn't need them, he said, it makes me feel a little less. And so I'm just wondering, I asked James before this podcast, I told him I was going to ask him this. What do you think? Does it make you feel less when a woman says she wants you, but she doesn't need you?
For me, no. But I think it's a balance. Men want to feel needed, and they want to feel wanted. But it just has to do with how they say it. It depends on the situation, how quick it is. Right off the bat, if I just need you, then that seems a little, might want to have the hands off. If it's right off the bat and it's I want you, yeah, that's sometimes very different.
Okay, so anyway, on this date, so I get out there, he's got this song playing throughout this LS something or other car, this really nice car. And I get in the car, he says, oh, good news. He had told me he wanted me to pick the place to take him on a date, which I never liked that either. I like a man who's going to have some place in mind that he wants to take me, even if he's from out of town. I mean, like, look it up on Google or with something to find a good restaurant in the area. So anyway, he picks me up and he says, good news, I found an Australian steakhouse I want to take you to. It's just right across the road, basically. So I'm like, great. Okay, so I get in the car, we go over there together, and it's an Australian steakhouse in South Beach. It's not there anymore. And so we sit down at this table, and we had like an instant, it seemed like, connection. We were getting along really well. And then he's like, he orders us a big seafood platter. He says, what do I want to eat? I'm like, well, I'm really not that hungry. I said, you order something and I'll share it with you. Well, he orders this big seafood platter and this expensive bottle of wine, red wine, which I love. And then, we start, sharing, eating, and having a good time. He gets up out of his chair at one point and comes over, gives me a kiss on the cheek. And then at another point in the evening, he came up over and kissed me on the lips, and I was like, wow, this is really going well. He was talking about all these things we were going to do in the future. He was going to come back and visit, blah, 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 blah. And then he disappears to go to the bathroom. And the waitress comes over to me and says, do you want us to pack all that up? And I said, well, why don't we wait until my date comes back from the restaurant and we'll find out. And she goes, oh, well, he just left out the front door. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He just left out the front door. And then my first question was the name of my blog, which was a 3-parter. Who's going to pay the check? This guy ducked out of my date that appeared to be going super well, super famously, ducked out of my date, sent me a message from the car and said he was mad at me because I didn't eat anything. Well, I had just little bits, I told him I wasn't hungry, but he said, you didn't enjoy all that I ordered and all that stuff. So whatever, I could pay the bill. I was stuck with the bill. And so he didn't really say who I was stuck with the bill because my question was who's going to pay the check, and then Anyway, I've never, ever, when I wrote these blogs, would blast someone's picture out there, ever. I would never want to call attention to anybody I went out with. I'd even change their names in my blogs. But that particular one, I put them on this website called badboys.com, and just said, women will look out for this guy. I found out, people sent me messages later on Facebook that said he had duped a couple of women. I don't know if he ended up in jail after that or whatever. But anyway, that's like the most memorable. That's the most memorable of my stories. And that, to me, what I drew from this was yesterday I was hearing something that President Trump said. And he said, if you don't feel worthy, you need to change your environment. It's kind of like a bottle of water. You buy a bottle of water in the store, it's $2. You buy a bottle of water in the gym, it's $4. You buy a bottle of water on the airplane, $7. If you don't feel worthy where you are, you need to change where you are. And then keep moving until you are feeling and you're surrounded by people that are making you feel good, worthy, inspired, and empowered. That's my message for today. Let me just give you a real quick real estate minute. And I got this from Google. Okay, this is the property that I have for sale that James is going to put up for you all to see here. It's $499,500. We've lowered the price for quick sale. It's amazing because it has a property in the backyard, which is actually has a tenant in it, which can come or go with the sale of the house. It's already paying half the mortgage if you mortgage it. They're paying $1,500 a month to live there. So anyway, it's a balanced market here in Florida again. Okay, Florida is no longer considered a seller's market according to Google, but rather a balanced market with increased inventory and softening prices. Right now, the median home price is $410,800. And the Florida real estate market is currently in a state of transition, moving away from the recent pandemic boom towards a more balanced, buyer-friendly market. While home prices are still rising, the rate of increase has slowed down and inventory is up, meaning there are more houses for sale. This suggests that buyers have more options and may be able to negotiate lower prices. So if you've got a realtor you're working with, please get in touch with your realtor. Find out what's available out there to buy, sell, invest, get the most for the property that you already have. And I'm Tracy Bush Payton. I would love to help you if you don't already have someone you're working with. And my number is 305-975-3404. Please don't text me or message me if you have nothing to say. If you're just going to text me and say hi, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to block you right there because I don't have time to message a lot of people. But if you really have something that you're interested in, if you have financing, or if you're going to be paying cash, I'd be more than happy to help you. Please give me a call, or you can also email me at Tracy, BEINGTRACY21@gmail.com. Love you guys. And I hope you got a little bit of something out of this podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel if you did. Like it if you did. Share it with someone you think might need to hear this message. And also, I'd love for you to post below this message what you thought. If you like it, if you didn't like it, what you could add or what you want to see more of. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.